screen remains black for a few seconds. Only slow breathing can be heard. Then Carlos's voice breaks the silence. Carlos says, "Have you ever had to choose between feeding your child or your mother?" The image slowly fades in, revealing Carlos's face in close-up. His eyes are moist, but steady. The shot widens, showing the apartment. Michael adjusts the recorder while Carlos holds a cup of coffee he never drinks. The silence between them is heavy. Michael speaks gently, clearly uncomfortable. "We can start whenever you're ready, Carlos. No rush." Carlos gives a faint smile and replies, "No rush. You know, Michael, that's a phrase I forgot back in Venezuela. There, everything was a rush. A rush to get to the line before the food ran out. A rush to get home before the blackout. A rush to live before." Carlos stops abruptly. Michael asks, "Before?" Carlos looks directly at Michael and says, "Before I answer that, let me ask you something. When was the last time you were truly hungry?" Michael thinks for a moment and answers, "Real hunger? I guess never. I mean, I've skipped meals because I was busy, but," Carlos interrupts him gently, "that's not hunger. That's distraction. Hunger is when your stomach hurts so badly you can't sleep. When you dream about food and wake up crying because the dream is over. When you look at your child and know they're feeling the same pain. And there's nothing you can do. Nothing." Carlos stands up and walks to the window. With his back to Michael, he continues, "You want to know about Venezuela? You want to know why we left?" He turns around and says, "First, I need you to understand something." Michael asks, "What?" Carlos replies, "That almost everything you think you know is probably wrong." Carlos sits back down and says, "Tell me, what do you know about my country?" Michael hesitates before answering, "Well, economic crisis, political problems, Maduro, Chavez, oil, high inflation." Carlos nods and says, "Words. You know words. But do you know what it means when inflation reaches 1,000,000%? Michael's eyes widen. 1 million? Is that even possible? Carlos lets out a humorless laugh and explains, "In 2018, Venezuela's annual inflation hit 1,700,000%. Do you know what that means in real life?" Carlos pulls an old Bolivar bill from his wallet and holds it up. "See this? 100,000 bolivars. When I left, this couldn't buy an egg. One egg, Michael. My salary as a university professor, 20 years into my career, couldn't pay for a bus ticket." Michael asks, "How did you survive?" Carlos gives a sad smile and replies, "That's the right question. And that's why you're here, isn't it? To understand how." Carlos pauses and looks straight ahead, as if speaking to someone beyond Michael. "And you watching this, you want to know too, don't you? How ordinary people, teachers, doctors, engineers, suddenly become refugees. How one of the richest countries in Latin America became synonymous with hunger." He pauses again. Then continues, "All right. I'll tell you, but first, I need to take you back to 2008. Back when hope still existed." Michael asks, "Why 2008? Carlos answers, "Because that's when I got married. When I bought my house. When I believed my children would have a better life than mine. Because to understand the fall, you need to know where we fell from." Carlos closes his eyes for a moment, then continues, "Caracas, 2008. I was 27 years old. I had just been hired as a full-time professor. Maria Elena, my wife, was a nurse. Together, we earned good money. Very good money." Michael asks, "How good?" Carlos replies, "We traveled every year. We had a car. Private health insurance. We ate meat every day. Every day, Michael. My mother used to say God was Venezuelan." Michael asks, "So what happened?" Carlos takes a long pause before answering, "The same thing that happens when you believe something will last forever. You stop paying attention. And when you finally realize it, it's already too late." Carlos stands again and says, "But that explanation is too simple. The truth is more complicated. The truth always is." He turns to Michael and asks, "Let me ask you something, American. Do you think Venezuela collapsed because of socialism?" Michael answers cautiously, "That's what people say." Carlos shakes his head. "People say a lot of things. They say it was Chavez. That it was Maduro. That it was corruption. That it was oil. That it was the Americans. That it was the left. That it was the right." He sits down and asks, "Want to know what I think?" Michael replies, "I do." Carlos says, "It was all of that. And it was more. It was the arrogance of believing the good times would never end. The silence of those who saw things going wrong and said nothing. The greed of those who stole. The blindness of those who only saw what they wanted to see. It was human. After a moment of silence, Carlos looks forward again and says, "And before you think this could never happen in your country, remember this, we thought the same thing." On screen, text appears. In 2001, Venezuela had the highest GDP per capita in Latin America. By 2020, 96% of the population was living below the poverty line. The scene returns to the same apartment. The light has shifted slightly, it's later now. Michael pours more coffee for both of them. Carlos accepts it and, this time, takes a sip. Michael asks, "You mentioned 2008 is a good year. When did things start to change?" Carlos grows thoughtful and replies, "It wasn't a single moment. It happened slowly. Like a fever that keeps rising. At first, you feel a little discomfort and assume it will pass. By the time you realize it's serious, you're already burning." Michael says, "Try to explain it to me. To someone who never lived through it." Carlos sighs and sets his cup on the table. "Okay. Let's do this." 2012. The first thing you notice is that some supermarket shelves are empty. Not all of them. Just a few items. Corn flour, what we make our epis with, our bread, starts disappearing. Michael asks, "And you?" Carlos continues, "You adapt. You buy something else. You wait for it to come back. The government says it's an economic war. That business owners are hiding products to bring the government down, and you know what's crazy?" Carlos looks intently at Michael and says, "A lot of people believed it. I believed it, at first." Michael asks, "Why?" Carlos then turns to the audience, "And you? Have you ever believed something your government said simply because it was easier than facing the truth?" Turning back to Michael, he explains, "Because the alternative was admitting that something was deeply wrong. That the system was broken. And when you've already invested your faith in something, it's hard to accept that you were wrong." Carlos stands up and pulls an old notebook from the shelf. "Look at this. I kept a diary. Not of emotions, of prices." Michael asks, surprised, "Prices?" Carlos opens the notebook and reads, January 2015, 1 kilo of meat, 300 bolivars. January 2016, 3,000 bolivars. January 2017, 30,000 bolivars. January 2018, 2 million bolivars. He closes the notebook and continues, "And my salary? It went up maybe 20–30% a year." Michael asks, "How is that possible? Didn't the government do anything?" Carlos lets out a bitter laugh. "The government printed money. More and more and more. And the more they printed, the less it was worth. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline." Carlos sits back down and says, "But even that was still bearable. You could still survive. The worst came later." Michael asks, "What came later?" Carlos's voice drops, "Water." The silence between them grows heavy. Carlos continues, March 2018. "One day, I turn on the tap, and nothing comes out. I thought it would come back. It always does. 1 day. 2 days. A week. Nothing." Michael asks, incredulous, "A week without water?" Carlos stares into nothing as he speaks. "Do you know what it's like to wake up at 3 in the morning because you heard a rumor that a water truck might pass somewhere? To grab every bucket, jug, and bottle you own. To walk for miles in the dark. To wait in line with hundreds of people. And when it's finally your turn." Carlos's voice breaks, "It's gone." Michael, visibly affected, Carlos regains his composure and continues, "And you go back home. Your daughter asks if she can take a shower. You say no. She asks why. And you don't know what to say." Carlos looks forward and asks, "What would you say? Tell me. What would you say to a 9-year-old who just wants to take a shower?" After a long pause, Michael asks, "And the electricity? You mentioned blackouts." Carlos nods, "Ah, the electricity. That's another chapter in the story." 2019. The big blackout. Carlos walks to the window and continues, March 7, 2019. Thursday. I remember because I had exams to grade. At 5 in the afternoon, the power went out. That wasn't new, it went out every week. But this time. He turns back, this time, it lasted 5 days. Michael repeats, 5 days? Carlos explains, in some parts of the country, longer. Much longer. No electricity. No water, because the pumps run on power. No refrigeration, food rotting. No communication, phones dead, no signal. Hospitals shut down. Carlos's voice trembles. People died, Michael, in hospitals. On dialysis machines that stopped. In ICUs that went dark. Children. Elderly people. People who only needed electricity to stay alive. Michael turns off the recorder and says, "We can stop if you need to." Carlos shakes his head. "No. I need to tell this. You need to hear it. Because when this is over, you'll go back to your life. You'll turn on the tap and water will come out. You'll flip a switch and the lights will turn on. And maybe, you'll remember me. And you'll feel grateful for something you never thought about before." Michael turns the recorder back on and asks, "During the blackout, what did you do?" Carlos sits and replies, "We survived. That's what we do." My wife, who's a nurse, went to work anyway. On foot. A 1-hour walk. In the dark. To care for patients who were dying because there was no power to keep them alive. My kids stayed home with me. We lit candles. Told stories. My daughter drew all the time. It was the only entertainment she had. And you know what the craziest part is? Michael asks. "What?" Carlos answers, "You get used to it. Human beings get used to everything. And that's the most frightening part of all." On screen, text appears. The March 2019 blackout affected 23 of Venezuela's 24 states. An estimated 40+ people died directly due to lack of electricity. Then, another line appears. If your city went 5 days without power, what would you do? Carlos is standing in the small kitchen of the apartment. Michael remains seated, watching him. It's morning, and the natural light enters the room differently. Carlos opens the refrigerator, full, and says, "Look at this. Milk. Eggs. Cheese. Fruit. Meat." He closes the fridge and continues, "Every time I open this refrigerator, I cry on the inside. Not out of happiness. Out of guilt." Michael asks, "Guilt?" Carlos walks back to the chair and explains, "My mother is still there. My sister. My nephews. And I'm here. With a full refrigerator." He sits down heavily and says, "You asked about hunger earlier. I'm going to tell you about hunger." Michael leans forward. "Please." Carlos takes a sip of coffee and begins, 2017. That was the year my family truly started to starve. Not discomfort. Hunger. My salary couldn't buy food for a week. Maria Elena's barely covered 2 days. And there were 4 of us. 5, with my mother. Michael asks, "What did you eat?" Carlos's gaze drifts away. Rice, when there was rice. Lentils, because they were cheaper than beans. Canned sardines, when they showed up. And yuca. A lot of yuca. Cassava, you call it. Meat? Once a month. If that. Chicken? A luxury item. Fruit? A birthday present. Carlos picks up a glass of water and drinks slowly before continuing. My son, Sebastian, was 14. A teenager. Growing. He needed protein. He lost 12 kilos in 1 year. 12 kilos. His voice tightens. And I watched him pretend he wasn't hungry. Saying, "I don't want any more, Dad," while there was still food on his plate, so there would be more left for his sister. 14 years old. The silence grows heavy. Michael speaks softly. "That's. I don't have words." Carlos looks directly at him. "You don't need words. You need understanding." Then he turns to the viewer. "And you, can you imagine your child doing that? Can you imagine looking at the child you brought into this world and not having food to give them? Can you? Because I need you to try, not for me. For all those who are still there." After a long pause, Carlos continues, "But you want to know the worst part? It wasn't the hunger itself. It was the humiliation." Michael asks, "Humiliation?" Carlos stands and begins to pace. "I'm a teacher. I was a teacher. 20 years of experience. A master's degree in history. Academic publications. I taught thousands of students. And suddenly, I was digging through trash." Michael's eyes widen. Carlos notices and says, "Does that shock you?" "It shocked me too. The first time." He sits on the arm of the couch and continues, "There was a market near my house. Every night, they threw away what didn't sell. Bruised fruit. Wilted vegetables. Bread from the day before. One night I walked by and saw it, piles of food in the trash. And I thought, this is madness. This is food. My children are at home hungry. I looked around. No one was watching. And I took it." The silence is crushing. Carlos's voice breaks. "I took food from the trash, Michael, me. Carlos Andres Mendoza. A university professor. From the garbage. Like a dog. Michael looks away, but Carlos stops him. No. Don't look away. Look at me. You need to see this. You need to understand that this can happen to anyone. That the distance between you and the trash is smaller than you think. Michael looks back and asks weakly, what did you feel? Carlos answers, the first time? Shame. A burning shame. I went home shaking. Maria Elena saw the food. Saw my face. She didn't ask anything. She just hugged me. And we cried together in the kitchen. The second time? Still shame. The third? A little less. The 10th? It was just routine. He stares ahead. That's how dignity dies. Not all at once. Little by little. Until you forget it ever existed. Carlos walks to the window and continues, but it wasn't just me. It was everyone. Neighbors I'd known my whole life. Lawyers. Engineers. Shop owners. Everyone in the same line. At the same trash. It even had a name. Los que buscan comida, the ones who look for food, as if it were a profession. Michael asks, and the government? Wasn't there any aid program? Carlos lets out a bitter laugh. The government. Oh, the government. There were the clap boxes. Subsidized food boxes. They came once a month, when they came. And what was inside? Rice. Flour. Oil. Sometimes powdered milk. Never protein. Never fruit. Never vegetables. And to receive them, you had to be registered. And to be registered, you needed the Carnet de la Patria, a card that proves your loyalty to the government. Michael says, so food was used as. Carlos finishes, control. Exactly. Want to eat? Support the government. Want to survive? Stay quiet. He looks forward and asks, and before you judge, what would you do? If your family were starving, and all you had to do was take a card, would you take it or not? Answer me. The silence answers. Carlos speaks softly, most people took it. I took it. I hated myself for it. But I took it. Because hunger does not negotiate with pride. On the screen appears the text, between 2015 and 2020, the average Venezuelan lost 11 kilos of body weight. The phenomenon became known as Maduro's diet. Then a final question, where is the line between survival and dignity? It is night. Only a small lamp is on. Carlos holds a family photograph he took from the shelf. Michael looks at the photo and asks, your family? Carlos nods. This photo is from 2016. Christmas. It was the last Christmas we all spent together. He points to the image. Maria Elena. My children, Sebastian and Valentina. My mother, Rosa. My sister, Carmen, with her kids. Michael asks, where's everyone now? Carlos exhales slowly. Scattered. Like leaves in the wind. Maria Elena and the kids are here with me. My sister went to Chile. One of my nephews is in Colombia, another in Peru. My mother. His voice falters. My mother didn't want to leave. Michael asks gently, why not? Carlos places the photo back on the shelf and explains, she says she's too old to start over. That she was born Venezuelan and she will die Venezuelan. That someone has to take care of the memories. And I respect that. Even though it kills me inside every single day. After a pause, Carlos turns to the viewer. Do you know how many Venezuelans have left the country in recent years? More than 7 million. 7 million. Out of a population of 30 million. Nearly a quarter of the country is gone. It's the largest exodus in the history of Latin America. Bigger than any war. Bigger than any natural disaster. And it happened in silence. Michael asks, why in silence? Carlos shrugs. Because there were no bombs. No gunshots. No dramatic images for the news. Just people walking. Thousands. Millions. With backpacks on their backs and hunger in their stomachs. That doesn't make a good picture, does it? A family walking down a highway isn't news. It doesn't compete with terrorism. With war. With the tweet of the day. He adds bitterly, the world only pays attention when suffering is spectacular. Slow suffering doesn't sell. Michael writes something down and asks, what was the decision to leave like? Carlos pauses for a long time. It wasn't a decision. It was a surrender. He continues as the memories return. February 2019. Sebastian was 16. He came home from school, when there was school, and said, Dad, I can't take this anymore. My son. Always strong. Never complained. He looked me in the eyes and said, I don't see a future here. I want to leave. Carlos pauses. then continues. And in that moment, I realized it was no longer about me. It never had been. It was about giving my children a chance. A chance they would never have if we stayed. Michael asks, and Maria Elena? What did she think? Carlos smiles sadly. She had wanted to leave for 2 years. But she stayed because of me. Because I was stubborn. Because I thought things would get better. Because I couldn't accept defeat. When I finally said, let's go, she cried. But not out of happiness. Out of relief. And a little anger, I think. Anger that I waited so long. Carlos stands and walks slowly. But leaving isn't simple. It's not just packing a bag and going. First, money. We didn't have any. What we had was the house. We sold it for a third of its value, 20 years of savings, sold in desperation. Second, documents. A passport in Venezuela costs a fortune. And it takes months. Sometimes years. We were lucky, we got ours in 4 months. It only cost 3 months' salary each. Michael repeats, shocked, 3 months' salary for a passport? Carlos nods. Welcome to Venezuela. Even escaping is expensive. He sits again and continues. Third, saying goodbye. That was the worst part. His voice trembles. Going to my mother's house. Looking her in the eyes. Knowing it might be the last time. She hugged me and said, my son, go. And don't look back. Carlos pauses. I looked back. On the bus, leaving Caracas. I looked back and watched my city disappear. 38 years of my life. Vanishing through a bus window. Silence fills the room. Michael asks, where did you go first? Carlos answers, Colombia. Cucuta. At the border. Thousands of Venezuelans crossing every day. An endless line of desperate people. And on the other side, another country that didn't have much either, but it had more than we did. Anything was more than what we had. He looks at Michael, then at the viewer. Do you know what it's like to cross a border as a refugee? It's not like an airport. There's no orderly line. It's chaos. Desperation. 1,000 people wanting the same thing, to leave, to survive. And the guards look at you like you're trash. Because to them, you are. One more problem. One more mouth. One more number. Me, a university professor. Respected. Admired. Reduced to a number on a form. Just another Venezuelan. He pauses. Whatever dignity I had left? It died at that border. Michael asks quietly, and after Colombia? Carlos replies, we stayed for a year. I worked whatever I could find. Salesman. Laborer. Porter. Maria Elena got a job at a pharmacy. The kids studied wherever they could. Then we finally got visas to come here. Miami. The promised land. Where I now drive Uber 12 hours a day. He gives a bitter smile. The American dream, Michael. On the screen, text appears, 7.7 million Venezuelans have left the country since 2014. It is the largest refugee crisis in the history of the Americas. Then the final question, what would make you abandon everything you know? Carlos is in the kitchen, preparing coffee. It is morning, the natural light feels different. Michael steps into frame and asks, did you sleep well? Carlos answers without turning around. I haven't slept well in years. But last night was worse. Talking about these things brings the ghosts back. He turns around with 2 cups and offers one. Coffee? Michael takes it. Please. They sit. Carlos says, yesterday we talked about leaving. About escaping. Today I need to talk about the cost. Because everything has a cost. Michael asks, what kind of cost? Carlos takes a sip. Not money. That's the smallest part. The soul. It's your soul that you pay. He sets the cup down and continues. My wife was a head nurse. 15 years of experience. She managed a team of 30 people. Here, she works as a caregiver for the elderly. She cleans people. Changes diapers. For a third of what she earned back there. Not because she isn't capable. But because her degree means nothing here. Because she would have to study everything again. And who has the time? Who has the money? Michael asks, and you? Carlos laughs without humor. Me? Professor of Venezuelan history. Very useful in Miami, right? Hey everyone, let me explain the Federal War of 1859. He pauses, then continues. So I drive. Uber. Lyft. Whatever comes up. I leave at 5 in the morning. I get back at 10 at night. Inside the car, I'm invisible. Passengers don't even look at me. I'm just the driver. Carlos stands and walks to the window. With his back turned, he says, "You know what's worse? It's not the work. Work is work. I'm not ashamed of working. What's worse is when a passenger asks where I'm from. Venezuela? Wow, what a situation, huh?" And then they change the subject. As if my country were entertainment. A curiosity. A news headline. He turns around. My life became uber small talk. Silence settles in. Michael asks, "And your children? How are they handling it?" Carlos sits again. Sebastian is 20 now. He works and studies. Engineering. Community college. He adapted quickly. Young people adapt. But I see a hardness in his eyes that shouldn't be there. He grew up too fast. Skipped his youth. Valentina is more complicated. She was 12 when we left. She's 15 now. She doesn't talk much about Venezuela. It's like she blocked it out. But sometimes, at night, I hear her crying. And when I ask, she says it's nothing. Carlos's voice breaks. My daughter learned how to cry in silence. At 15. Michael turns off the recorder. Do you want to take a break? Carlos shakes his head. No. Keep going. The pause is what allowed all of this to happen. The world paused. Looked away. And Venezuela burned in silence. Michael turns the recorder back on. Carlos looks ahead and says, "You want to know the real price of emigrating? I'll tell you." He continues. It's waking up at 3 in the morning because you dreamed you were home. And for 1 second, just one, you forgot. Forgot that that home no longer exists. And waking up feels like dying all over again. It's calling your mother and hearing her cry because she doesn't know when she'll see you again. And you can't say soon, because that would be a lie. It's watching your son speak English better than Spanish and realizing he's becoming someone else. Someone you might not fully know anymore. It's living in a free, safe country, with food on the table, and still feeling like a part of you died. Carlos pauses. That's the price. You pay it every day. For the rest of your life. After a long silence, Michael asks softly, "Do you regret leaving?" Carlos thinks for a long time. No. And yes. And no. He explains. I regret having had to leave. But not leaving. If I had stayed, my children wouldn't have a future. They might not even be alive. Venezuela is killing its people, Michael. Not with bullets, with slowness. With hunger. With disease. With despair. A kind of death no one sees. No one counts. So no. I don't regret it. But I suffer. Every day. Carlos takes out his phone and shows a message. Look at this. My mother sent it yesterday. My son, don't worry about me. I'm fine. Yesterday I managed to buy a chicken. I'm happy. He puts the phone away. My mother, at 74, tells me she's happy because she managed to buy a chicken. And she thinks that will calm me. His eyes fill with tears. But I know she's lying. I know she sells her things to eat. I know she doesn't take her medicine because it's too expensive. I know she's dying slowly, alone. And I'm here. With a full refrigerator. Sending money that is never enough. He looks forward. That's the price. How much would you pay? On screen, text appears. Venezuelans abroad sent approximately $4 billion in remittances to their families in 2022. For many, this money is their only means of survival. Then the question, is it possible to live in two places at the same time? It is late. Carlos and Michael sit facing each other. The atmosphere is more tense now. Michael says, Carlos, I need to ask a difficult question. Carlos crosses his arms. Every question in this conversation has been difficult. One more won't make a difference. Michael asks, who is to blame? A long silence settles in. Carlos lets out a dry laugh, without humor. That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Everyone wants someone to blame. A villain. Someone to point at and say, it was him. He leans forward. The answer you're looking for is Chavez. Maduro. Socialism. The left. It's a simple answer. Easy to digest. Michael asks, but isn't that the answer? Carlos shakes his head. It's an answer. It's not the answer. Carlos stands and begins to pace. Let me tell you a story. Before Chavez, in the 1990s, Venezuela was already in crisis. High inflation. Corruption. Growing poverty. Previous governments, right-wing, center, whatever you want to call them, had looted the country for decades. When Chavez appeared, he was hope. For millions of people who had never had anything. He promised that the poor would finally have a voice. And for a while, he delivered. Michael asks, so you supported Chavez? Carlos turns to him. I voted for him. In 1998. And in 2000. Then I stopped. But many people didn't. Do you know why? Because he gave things. Houses. Food. Cuban doctors. For the first time, poor people had access to healthcare and education. That's real. It happened. The problem is that he gave without building. He distributed oil wealth without creating anything new. When oil prices fell, there was nothing left. Just empty promises and empty coffers. Carlos sits on the arm of the couch. But putting all the blame on Chavez is too easy. And then he died, and Maduro took over. And made everything worse. Incompetence. More corruption. Growing authoritarianism. But also American sanctions. Sanctions imposed by your country, Michael. Sanctions that, in theory, targeted the government, but in practice suffocated the people. Michael grows defensive. The sanctions were meant to pressure the regime. Carlos interrupts him. I know the theory. I live the reality. When you sanction oil sales, Maduro doesn't suffer. He keeps eating. My mother suffers because she can't get medicine. Hospitals suffer because they have no equipment. Children suffer because they don't get vaccines. He looks forward. So tell me, who is to blame? The government that stole? The system that allowed it? The powers that imposed sanctions? The population that became divided and didn't react in time? Carlos pauses. The truth no one wants to hear is this: everyone is to blame. And no one is. It's systemic. It's historical. It's human. He continues. And while people abroad argue about whether it was socialism or imperialism, Chavez or the United States, this or that, my people die. Carlos stands again, his voice rising. You want to be right. The left wants it to be the right's fault. The right wants it to be the left's fault. And while you argue, 7 million people lost everything. His voice lowers. I don't want to be right. I wanted my country back. Silence fills the room. Michael says quietly, I had never thought about it that way. Carlos sits, calmer now. Of course you hadn't. Why would you? You have the luxury of having opinions about Venezuela without consequences. For you, it's politics. Debate. A tweet. For me, it's life. Family. Blood. Carlos looks directly ahead. And you watching, what is your opinion about Venezuela? Who do you think is to blame? He pauses. Now answer me something else. Have you ever been there? Have you ever spoken to someone from there? Or does your opinion come from newspapers? From social media? From memes and headlines? After a longer pause, he continues. I'm not saying you can't have an opinion. I'm saying you need humility. The humility to accept that reality is more complex than any narrative you've been sold. Michael remains silent. Carlos says, I'll tell you what I've learned. Ideology kills. It doesn't matter which one. When you put ideology above people, people die. That's what happened with Chavismo. It would happen with any ism. Because those in power always find justification. And those who suffer, just suffer. On screen, text appears, Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. And one of the highest poverty rates in Latin America. Then the question, natural wealth guarantees prosperity for whom? It is late afternoon. Golden light pours through the window. Carlos and Michael are more relaxed now, but exhausted. Michael says, Carlos, we're coming to the end. I want to ask you something. Do you have hope? A long silence follows. Carlos looks out the window. Hope. That's a dangerous word. He turns back. Hope is what made me stay too long. Hope is what I fed myself while my children were hungry. Hope almost killed me. Michael asks, so, you don't? Carlos sits down slowly. That's not what I said. I said it's dangerous. But you can't live without it, can you? Carlos picks up the family photo again. My son wants to be an engineer. My daughter wants to be an artist. My wife still dreams of being a real nurse again. I dream of teaching again. He puts the photo back. And do you know why we keep dreaming? Because giving up would mean admitting that all the suffering was for nothing. And we can't do that. It would be spitting in the face of those who stayed. Of those who died. Of those who are still fighting. Carlos leans forward. You asked me about hope. I'll tell you about the Venezuela I want to see. Not the country from before. That one was already flawed. Not the country of today. That one is dying. But a new country. Built by those who left and those who stayed. By people who learn the hard way what works and what doesn't. A country that values education more than oil. Diversity more than ideology. People more than power. Michael asks, do you think that's possible? Carlos smiles, for the first time, a real smile. Possible? I don't know. Necessary? Absolutely. Carlos stands and walks to the Venezuelan flag on the shelf. He holds it gently. 8 stars. 8 provinces that formed our independence. Yellow for wealth. Blue for the sea. Red for the blood that was spilled. He turns. Too much blood, Michael. Far too much. But the country still exists. It's still there. And as long as there is a Venezuelan child somewhere in the world, Venezuela exists. He puts the flag back and continues, my daughter, Valentina, made a drawing last week. Do you know what it was? A house in Caracas. With a garden. With sunlight. And underneath, written in Spanish, para cuando volvamos. For when we return. His voice trembles. She's 15 and she still believes she'll go back. And I don't have the courage to tell her that maybe she won't. Because maybe she's right. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Michael turns off the recorder. Carlos, thank you. For everything. Carlos looks at him. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you do something with this. Michael asks, what do you mean? Carlos grows serious. You'll leave here. You let it this. You'll put it out into the world. And then what? You move on to the next story? The next documentary? I don't want to be just content, Michael. I don't want to be that Venezuelan you interviewed once. I want this to change something. Michael asks, what do you suggest? Carlos thinks, then answers. Show the humanity. Not the spectacle. Show that we're not numbers, not statistics. We're people. With dreams. With families. With history. He looks forward. And when someone watches this, when you watch this, I want you to ask yourself, what can I do? It doesn't have to be big. It can be learning more before giving an opinion. It can be treating immigrants with dignity. It can be questioning easy narratives. It can be simply remembering that we exist. Carlos looks straight ahead in this final moment. I started this conversation by asking if you've ever had to choose between feeding your child or your mother. I hope you never have to make that choice. He continues. But if one day you do, if one day your world collapses, remember this, you are not alone. Millions have been through this before you. And millions will go through it after you. After a pause, he concludes. The only thing we can do is not let it happen in silence. Not let it be forgotten. Not let others become just others. Because in the end, there are no others. There's only us. All of us, trying to survive. Trying to make sense of things. Trying to move forward. Carlos extends his hand to Michael. They shake hands. Carlos says, thank you for listening. Now go. Tell this story. And try not to get it too wrong. Michael laughs. Carlos laughs too, for the first time, a moment of lightness. The camera slowly pulls away. Carlos stands by the window. The golden light of sunset illuminates his face. Carlos's voice narrates, when I was a child, my grandmother used to tell me, my son, life is like the Orinoco River. Sometimes calm, sometimes furious. But always flowing toward the sea. I keep going. My family keeps going. 7 million Venezuelans keep going. And one day, maybe the river will be calm again. And we'll finally be able to rest. The screen fades to black. After 5 seconds of silence, text slowly appears. Carlos continues to live in Miami with his family. Sebastian is in his 3rd year of engineering. Valentina won an art award at school. Maria Elena passed the nursing revalidation exam. Carlos's mother, Rosa, passed away in 2023. He was unable to attend the funeral. Venezuela is still waiting. The screen remains black, and the final question appears, and now, what will you do with what you've heard?